Bitcoin mining is unique. In ERCOT, I think it helps solve a tremendous amount of problems, but it also pushes the envelope for innovation every single day. Hash rate is just constantly coming online because people know that if I'm not mining today and I'm mining tomorrow, I'm just going to be getting less Bitcoin because I'm really putting myself at a disadvantage because I'm closer to the halving. I answered them and I didn't stay true. I wish I did.
What's going to happen here is they're going to take away a lot of opportunity and a lot of jobs from people in these areas. So if you were a robot, what do you think that you would be programmed to do?
Oh boy. That's a good question. I don't know if I'm going to like my answer. My team can probably hear me a little bit too, and they're probably not going to like my answer either. But I've been told, and I really disagree, that I micromanage a little bit. So I would probably be this little robot that just goes around and saying, hey, any progress on this? What's up with this? What's up with this? And did we send that email yet? Let me see that email before you send it just to make sure it looks good. I think I probably would be an annoying robot. And I would just be constantly, hey, Will, where are we with this? And I've gotten better, I'd say, recently at empowering people to, go out, do your thing. I trust you, and let's let this whole thing kind of flow. But I would say I would probably be an annoying robot that's going to micromanage and just constantly ping you, constantly will.
You would be like the first generation AGI.
Yes.
But just particularly for making sure that people are getting their stuff done.
Yes, that's exactly it. Man, I'm not going to be a fun robot. I guess I'd be a pretty annoying robot. Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah. The developments in AI are pretty crazy at this point. So who knows? Maybe they'll make a Dan 2.0.
Yeah, and all it
Dan
does
GPT
is just
at some point.
it's just a reminder robot, and it just constantly keeps saying, hey, don't forget to do this. Don't forget to do this. I don't think I would use it.
That is one of the, just going on that topic a little bit deeper, one of the hardest things I think about actually building an organization is finding a way to almost step back and not necessarily do that, because you want to get involved with every single part. And I mean, I think Mitch mentioned this last time where he was saying that you're just always working. You're always grinding away. So you're always making sure that something's getting done and things are getting pushed along.
Yeah, it's been growing. There've been some growing pains, I would say. So our history, we started back in 2016 or 2017. I don't know if you can see him. He's right over my shoulder working behind me. Me and my co-founder started OBM. We were like small scale hobby miners. And for the longest time, it was just me and him. We were writing the software for our own use, running the mine. Never really got that big as a mine. It was just a fun hobby project. But for the longest time, we ran this company, built Foreman, found some users, all the way up through 2021, early 2022. It was still just Jake and I. So everything was, and we didn't realize at the time that we were kind of choking the company and holding it back. We were juggling full-time jobs and thinking we could keep up at night, and just had no idea that the bandwidth we thought we had available to it was actually nowhere near enough bandwidth. So, but for 5 years, say, it was just Jake and I, and anything that came out of this company was the work of something that he or I did. And then when you start to hire people and bring them in, sometimes it's hard to go from that, like, I've got to do it all, because if I don't do it, it's literally not going to get done because it's just me and one other person, to now you've got other people and you're adding bandwidth, and they can only go as fast as you let them go. And I think over the last year, I've probably been struggling with that. Like, I've got to do less, and at the end, we will get more. So that's been a fun kind of learning experience for me. I think that I'm getting much better about it now. I find myself saying, I trust you guys. Go off, make a decision, handle it, and let me know if it blows up, and then maybe I can come in and help with a fire extinguisher. It's hard though. It's hard when you build something and it's just you and somebody else for so long, and then you get this feeling that by giving responsibilities up to other people and trusting them to help run the company with you, it's hard to not feel like you're being lazy. And I don't like to feel lazy, so I feel like I need to work more and grind more. And when I'm giving something to somebody else, it feels like I'm just not doing that anymore, and it feels like a loss. It's been a fun growing exercise, but I think that the trajectory we're on right now, I feel pretty good about it.
So in starting the company, you mentioned that it was initially you and your co-founder.
Mm-hmm.
What was the genesis of the idea? And then how did you start building that idea up to the point where you just end up having to hire people, and then all of a sudden your new job is almost like a firefighter? And I will
Yeah.
mention that whenever I speak to CEOs or people who are within these larger organizations, it is really interesting to hear that as these organizations grow, it's counterintuitive. You think that things are just going to be better once we get to this next stage, once you get bigger. But what the reality is once you actually hit those bigger milestones, there are just more problems out there, and you're just constantly firefighting
Yeah.
and not necessarily in the weeds doing everything, but more so just what's mission critical, what needs to get fixed right now.
Yeah. So we kind of what took us off a little bit. So we were building Foreman just for our own use for a very long time, just managing our mine remotely, just to save pretty much an hour-long drive, because I didn't want to drive all the way up to Westminster, Maryland, which was where our mine was located. We're from Baltimore. So it's an hour drive one way. You reboot stuff, you come back home. And then there were a couple times when I would get back home and Jake would call me and it's like midnight. And he would say, "You still up there? Because everything's offline again. Are you still working on it?" "No, I left an hour ago." Damn. So then I got to turn around and drive back up there. So you do that a couple times. You're like, absolutely no more. I'm tired of remote desktop disconnecting. I'm tired of the PC restarting and some team view or whatever didn't start up. It just got to be a pain in the butt. So our background was software. We built Foreman for our own use. We designed it just because Jake, his background was SaaS startups in Baltimore. He was the one that did a lot of the framework and everything. And he started off just treating it like it was going to be something that was going to hit the market. There's going to be a login page. You can sign up. You can do all this stuff. And I don't think that we ever really thought that it was going to turn into a business, I would say. I think when we first broke into the space, there were competitors already here. And we actually started off focusing on GPUs. And we were just thinking, we'll give a fresh take on GPUs here, but they're pretty far along. They're building OSs. They're doing all this stuff that's so intricate, and we're hanging off on the side. We're not really an OS. So there's only so much we can do. So it just started off going down the route of let's just have fun, make some good looking software, and it'll be fun because we've always wanted to build something together. And then we got this crazy idea one day. Let's put it on Reddit. Let's see if anybody has an interest in maybe using it on Reddit. And man, it was so bad. The version of the stuff that we rolled out was not good. And it worked for us, but some people signed up, some people used it. We started to see people around the world giving it a shot, and nobody was big. Everybody was kind of small to mid-tier. We had one customer sign up with several hundred L3 pluses or L3s back then, Litecoin miners. And that was when we were like, man, maybe there is some interest out here. So let's just keep building and building and building. And I got too into it. He probably retracted a little bit because we were thinking, oh, maybe this isn't going to turn into anything. Maybe we're just spending time developing something that we're never going to be able to make anything on. And we just kept building, and it just kept getting more and more traction and more and more traction. And then some bigger players eventually started to have conversations with us, and it just kind of grew from there. It was fun though. I remember our first conference. I think I remember. Were you there in some capacity? Well, it was this.
Which conference was it?
The Vegas one. It was in maybe 2018.
Was it WCC, World CryptoCon?
Yes,
I was there.
Yes,
I think we had a booth there. It was with our previous branding too. Yeah,
I think I remember seeing a SAS over there, and me and Jake were just walking around with an iPad and just trying to show stuff and get in front of people. And I remember you guys had a corner back there right next to, I think, MicroBT.
Yeah. Great memory. That was a fun event.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
Well, it wasn't for us. We got no business out of it. But I remember a SAS mining tucked away, and I just actually made that connection that you were there. Wow, small world. But I remember being there and feeling like we were way out of our league because we're just walking around with iPads and everybody else has booths, and we're just trying to say, "Hey, what do you do? Hey, guess what we do?" And then we hold up this iPad. It was a fun grind. And here we are. Well, a small world actually talking right now, and we've talked before, I guess, in 2018. That's kind of funny.
Yeah, I guess we must have a similar conference schedule or something like that because we just saw each other in Miami.
Yeah,
not too long ago.
Man, what That's crazy. I can't believe I just made that mental connection. Weird. Weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at that time, you're signing people up at the Vegas event,
Hmm.
trying to get new customers, and I'm sure you're iterating on the software. At what point did you really start to realize, hey, this is something that the market needs, and it's something that we can really start to focus all of our time on? So it sounds like early on you were doing it in a part-time capacity, and then you started getting traction. You got some larger people involved. At what point did you make that next jump to saying, okay, well, let's really try and start to scale this thing?
So I remember my last job, I was a software engineer. I was running a software team. And I remember talking to my team members, and they were like, "You work all night on Foreman, and then you come here and work all day. At what point do you make the leap and give it a shot?" And I answered them, and I didn't stay true. I wish I did. I said, if we can make 30 grand in 1 year, I'll make the leap. And we hit the 30 grand mark. I didn't keep my word. I kept trying to juggle both. And it got to the point where I would be at my desk job all day, and we use Discord for customer support. And it got to the point where I was constantly having to go out to my car, to get on my phone, to try to help people and solve stuff, because I can't be doing this in here. I can't be doing it in the building. We're not supposed to be working on other things while I'm in here. So it's more of just like, let me read Discord, see when something takes off, and then I'll go out to my car and kind of try to help them as much as I can. And I got to the point where meetings were starting to hit in the morning. I'd go to work at 8. I'd be leaving for I call my day at 10:30, and then I'd go home and work on Foreman all day. And Jake was working from home on his other kind of startup endeavor that he was involved with, and we both just realized we were splitting our days so much that, like, maybe we have something here. So let's try to get this thing a little more polished. Let's get some enterprise SaaS contract paperwork together. Let's see if people will sign up and commit, rather than just this free model we were just cruising with for so long. Let's just see if people will start signing contracts. And then we started floating them out, and some people started to sign it. And then we were like, man, we have committed revenue. Like, is this, do we do it? Do we do it? I don't know. Because what if everybody just cancels? What if everybody just cancels the contracts? And we're not going to go around suing people. So, and we did it. And it was crazy, and it's fun. And I would say I miss what I used to do. I think it was kind of a cool space, but it's so much more fun building something.
Yeah. And also, it sounds like, if I'm reading this correctly, I feel like I've experienced something similar, where in those early days of an organization, even though you're working just crazy hours and you're juggling and you're finding ways to just slot in ways to work on whatever it is that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Logically, when you look back, you shouldn't look back at it as such a fun time, because you're just grinding nonstop. There's obviously a lot of stress. There's so much uncertainty. These are all recipes for not necessarily a fun time, if you think about it, because it's just all this stress. But those are some of the best times, when you're obsessed with something, you just can't stop thinking about it, and you're doing what you mentioned, where you're going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. You're holding like 4 jobs that would normally be taken by like different people in a company, and you just somehow find a way to get it done.
Yeah. It was I don't know, it was stressful but fun. Super stressful, super fun. A lot of work, a lot of hours. Conversations with my fiance up front, just being like, hey, this is going to be really tough. And and she was on board, and it was just, but it was fun. It was kind of neat to put hours into something, and then you see the reward right back. Like, you get on a call and you try to sell somebody on something, and then they're like, all right, yeah, let's see what you're thinking. Send over a quote, and that turns into a deal, and you're like, wow, like, I did that. I brought somebody emailed me, and it turns it into a business relationship. It's just really, it was fun. And all the biz dev, all the sales, we were both, as we say, tickling the plastic. So coding by night. It was just a lot of work, a lot of roles, a lot of responsibilities we were both doing, but fun, stress, but fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So let's dive into the actual Bitcoin mining side of things.
Sure.
And there are so many different areas that we can dive into. I'm sure that a lot of the people listening probably have a decent level of understanding when it comes to what Bitcoin mining is. But the topics that I think it would be cool to dive into with you would be price, difficulty. So Bitcoin price, difficulty of the network, where that might be going. We'll go into some predictions later on, but then also how to maximize profitability. I think that you're one of the best people to speak with on this particular topic, not just because of your background with Foreman, but because of your understanding of these different levers that Bitcoin miners have. And the first lever that I want to talk with you about is demand response. So, for everyone out there who hasn't heard of demand response, could you define what it is and then talk about why demand response is important for you as a Bitcoin miner?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. So, demand response, the grid it's designed to work in perfect harmony. So, you want to have supply matching demand. So, that means if more people turn their lights on, more people run ACs, more people run the heat, demand goes up. There's got to be a counter to it. There's got to be more supply. And you can't just have an excess going into the grid because then frequency could fall out. So, it's got to be pretty much, you want it to be very harmonious. Supply, demand need to match. Demand response gives you a way to handle those imbalances at the grid level. So if there's a weather event coming through and somebody maybe say PJM, I'm in Maryland, that's the ISO that I'm a part of. If there's a stress on PJM, maybe cold storm front came through, got really cold, some of the generational assets maybe dried up, plus people are running a lot of heat, there's a lot of electrical consumption during that weather event, demand goes up. So now you need to have extra capacity to give to the consumers, so there's not a brownout or there's not a blackout where the grid actually shuts down because there's too much demand and not enough supply. So the nice thing is the grid can kind of incentivize large consumers to serve as a reserve of capacity, if you want to kind of view it that way. So if I'm a very large Bitcoin miner, if I'm a very large industrial facility or a plant, maybe I'm consuming 50 megawatts. So the grid, I'm always here, I'm always consuming it. So the grid's incentivized to keep producing it because I'm a consumer. I'm always buying 50, so they're always at least producing my 50. But then there's a weather event, and if you're not if the grid's not in a situation where they can just instantly start generating excess, they need to find a way, if there's a demand for an additional 50 on the grid, where are they going to get that 50 from? So they could say, hey, Dan, if you turn off, that gives me 50 to give to Will and everybody else. So you just turn off and I'll use what I was giving you everywhere else. So we're still same supply, but demand's kind of up, and I've reduced my demand, so now other people's demand's met. So that's the whole demand response thing. There's a stress, there's an imbalance. I need to ask somebody to respond to the increase in demand. They'll turn off, and now I've got extra capacity that I can give to everybody else. So that's how we maintain that equilibrium there.
Yeah. Just to pause there real quick to make sure that if I was just to say that back, demand response, it's really a function that's available to Bitcoin miners because there's a certain amount of demand that's needed amongst everyone who's getting electricity from the grid. You mentioned PJM.
Yeah.
And at times where, for example, a weather event happens and certain capacity is not online anymore, they've got to find a way through the demand response program to be able to access electricity for every single person on the grid.
That's exactly.
You don't want your lights going off, or you don't want hospitals shutting down. So the people in the demand response program can participate to ensure that there's enough electricity for everyone on the grid. And then for participating as a Bitcoin miner, I guess you'll dive into that right now. Is there anything important there that I missed that you want to add on?
What you said, I think, is exactly right. The nice thing about Bitcoin mining is the load profile to it. So traditionally, if you were going to if there was an increase in demand, maybe you have to contact a manufacturing facility or something, and they're kind of weighing the opportunity cost of how long is it going to take for us to come down, how much production are we going to lose, plus maybe it's going to take us another day and a half on the tail end of it to get our production back up to where we were. So there's this big opportunity cost to them. They're trying to evaluate, are they going to participate or not? Bitcoin mining, though, you can immediately turn off and immediately turn back turn back on. So as soon as the event hits, within 10 minutes or within a minute or within 15 seconds, you could be gone. And now that extra capacity is immediately available to everybody else. And then as soon as the event's over, you can immediately turn right back on, and within a minute or so, you're right back up to your 50 megs and you're consuming. So the load profile is what really makes it kind of juicy. The way that demand response benefits Bitcoin miners, because Bitcoin miners benefit the grid, having this load profile, they can participate in those kind of cool programs. The way that Bitcoin miners benefit from it is that they're an insurance policy to the grid. So I go to a CSP who kind of acts as a middleman between me and the grid. So like PJM, because that's where I am. So I would go to a curtailment service provider and say, hey, curtailment service provider, I'd like to offer up my 50 megawatts of capacity, my 50 megawatts of demand. And I want you to enroll me in demand response programs. The CSP will figure out, okay, you've got 50 megs. There's a whole bunch of different programs you can participate in. There's markets for each one. So we're going to put you into sync reserves, and you're going to do economic dispatches and traditional capacity markets. And they're going to come up with this strategy that's going to have all of your demand put into this portfolio of programs you're going to enroll in. So now when the grid, when PJM has an event and they say we need 50 megs, they have this assortment of facilities that they can ask to turn off. And the way that they're traditionally compensated would be, I say I've got 50 megs, I'm willing to offer it up to the grid. They say for 50 megs, we are going to pay you every month or every quarter, and you're our insurance policy. So we're going to pay you maybe say $80,000 per megawatt year. So $80,000 times 50 megs is how much I would make having 50 megs enrolled in demand response in something like PJM. So now I'm getting checks every month just to be available, just to be ready to be dispatched. So I'm sitting here, no events in January, cool, I'll just take my check. No events in February, just like auto insurance. You pay auto insurance every month, and 9 times out of 10, hopefully 10 times out of 10, you're never actually making a claim. But you're paying for that insurance policy. That all makes sense. Yep. So you're paying for that insurance policy. The grid's paying you to just say, be around in case I need you. Be around in case I need you. And then as soon as an event happens or there's an imbalance, they say, I need you, Will. And I've been paying you the whole time to respond. So you turn off. Thank you for doing what you said you're going to do. Just like if I have a claim against my auto insurance, I would say I have a claim, and they say, well, you've been paying your premium every month, so we're good. We'll cover it. It's the same thing that happens here. So they say, Will, we've been paying you all year. Time to turn off. Here's an event. You turn off. You met your obligation. You're a good insurance policy. They get extra capacity, and now they can give it back to everybody else. So Bitcoin miners are great because they're very large, flexible consumers on the grid, and they have that nice profile that makes them able to offer so much capacity into super fast ancillary markets. So 10-minute dispatches, 1-minute dispatches. It lets the grid be really, really flexible.
So it sounds like there are a couple of key parties within this system. And I'll try and lay it out how I'm seeing it, and you can let me know if there's anything that I forgot. So the one party that is very important, which you've mentioned, is the Bitcoin miner. So the Bitcoin miner, why are they important? They come in and they provide additional capacity, which is basically energy that can be contributed to the grid at any point. Now, why is this important? Well, because the grid at any single point in time has to be able to give electricity to anyone who needs energy. And that's what's powering, these lights right here, this call. that we're literally everything relies on the grid. And I think that the final piece of why this is important is this demand response aspect of what happens when there are stresses in the grid system. And one that we saw happen fairly recently was in Texas, right? When Texas was experiencing these rolling blackouts, you saw the Bitcoin miners being able to turn off their machines and contribute all of this capacity, all this electricity back to the grid. And many, many people, the last estimates I heard were 19,000 homes were being powered by the energy that was given back from the Bitcoin miners. So this, taking it from the conceptual to the real life aspect, this is meaningful. I mean, energy being brought back to households, that's lives, that's people being saved, people being able to run their lives because of these Bitcoin miners that decided to participate in this important program. And through this value, the Bitcoin miners, as you mentioned, back to the original question and how we dove down this rabbit hole, you get compensated if you understand this demand response program and if you decide to participate.
Yep.
Did I get everything there?
You're good. You're ready to sell.
Okay, awesome. So the next piece that I want to bring this to is I want to get your take on this. I don't even know what to call it, but the potential legislation that is going on in Texas right now. And I believe it just passed. What did it pass recently?
It passed the Senate committee, I think.
The Senate committee.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so I probably should have read up on it more before this conversation. So please let me know if there's any piece that I'm missing. My current understanding, based on what I've been reading on Twitter, is that this bill is very detrimental to Bitcoin mining in Texas. And this is really bad for a couple of reasons. One, because Texas, up until this point, had been seen as a great place for Bitcoin miners. And Bitcoin miners, through demand response, can help Texas in many ways. So that's one. The second piece is that this piece of legislation would take away the incentive for demand response, as well as take away the incentives that local economic developments can give to Bitcoin miners to get them to come to Texas.
Yep.
And the reason why this is really bad is, one, because this demand response makes the economics a lot better and it helps support the grid. They're trying to take that away. And then two, taking away the incentive to bring Bitcoin miners to the state is going to make Texas less competitive, and the ratepayers in ERCOT, like the Texas grid system, it's going to make it less resilient.
Yeah.
That's my current understanding of it, but I would love to get your take on what's going on here and if there are any potential implications to the Bitcoin mining industry here in the US.
Yeah, I'm really, I would say I'm hopeful that it doesn't go much further than passing through the Senate committee. I would say it's doing probably an injustice to Bitcoin miners, because when you look at it, it's just another industry that has a large power consumption, and any other industry can participate in demand response. So why should this one not be able to enroll? I would say it's probably an unfair stance that got made. And I think that what makes Texas so welcoming to Bitcoin miners is the volatile market. It has a very large renewable profile to it. There's a lot of wind, a lot of solar. And with those renewables, sometimes the output can be somewhat inconsistent. Maybe the wind stops blowing. Maybe we really hope the sun keeps shining. But if some of the wind production dies down, there would need to be an excess of supply that's able to go throughout Texas, because ERCOT's really interesting. It's kind of fully isolated. It has its own problems, and it has to also solve its own problems. So ERCOT is really the heart of grid level innovation, which is why you see so many interesting, unique demand response programs that really exist just within ERCOT. They're all designed to solve the problems of ERCOT. So I think that if this passes, and the assumption would be, from my take, it does not, I think this would be super detrimental to ERCOT grid innovation, and I would say grid innovation across the rest of the world, the rest of the U.S. and North America, because I view ERCOT as building the standards for how the rest of the grids should probably be functioning. And when you take away this large profile, these large flexible loads, when you take away the incentive to be an ERCOT, and then you look at other things too, where I think legislation is looking to push a Bitcoin mining tax at some point, just taxing Bitcoin miners. If we keep poking at it, we run the risk of Bitcoin mining leaving the U.S. I think a lot of people are looking out towards the Middle East and everything. We don't want that to happen, because when you look at some of these areas where Bitcoin miners are, they are, one, proponents of the grid. They help balance the grid. And two, they're a great source of jobs for industries that maybe used to exist in these areas. So maybe you go to a place where there used to be this big steel mill, and now there's just this rust all falling down everywhere. But those people that used to work there are now running the mine. Or if you look at what Riot's doing, I think they're one of the largest employers in the area that they're in. There's a lot of jobs that go with it too. So Bitcoin mining is great for the grid, and it should be incentivized to participate in demand response, just like any other industry can. If we keep trying to de-incentivize Bitcoin mining, we run the risk of pushing Bitcoin mining out of the US, and then it's going to take a lot of industry with it.
Yeah, it kind of sounds bad to say, but when a lot of times you see these politicians try and meddle in an industry, they can pass a law and they can put whatever sound bites they want behind it. But at the end of the day, what's going to happen here is they're going to take away a lot of opportunity and a lot of jobs from people in these areas, and they're going to make the grid less resilient.
Exactly.
And I actually hadn't thought about that, but it is very targeted if you think about any industry being able to participate in demand response. And then all of a sudden you're going to get rid of the Bitcoin miners' ability to do so when their load profile, their technology is perfect for helping balance the grid and perfect for helping to participate in demand response. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Let's try and ban those guys because that makes too much sense for them to participate.
Yeah, I think that Bitcoin mining has also been a good learning exercise too for how should the grid operate when there's these kind of events. So Bitcoin mining is unique. I'll play devil's advocate somewhat here. In ERCOT, I think it helps solve a tremendous amount of problems, but it also pushes the envelope for innovation. So one issue I think that people see sometimes now is there's a frequency that the grid has to operate. 60 hertz is where the frequency of the grid, if it's a healthy grid. If you have excess supply or if you have excess demand, frequency will drop below 60. If you fall too far out of band, that's when the grid will shut down. If you go too high, the same thing can happen. So you don't want to have too much excess supply. The Bitcoin mining it's great because, if you have an 800 meg site, you can participate in all these demand response programs. But what happens if you just kill an 800 meg site? Now you've got 800 megs of extra supply in the grid where there's no consumer. So you do run the risk of frequency going up. So I can understand I can sympathize some with maybe ERCOT's not quite ready for Bitcoin mining and how it's hyperscaling. But I think that they've already done a great job at finding technical solutions to counter some of those situations. So rather than Bitcoin miners able to immediately turn off, instead, there's a proposal now where they would have to step down at a certain ramp rate based on their size. So you're no longer just taking 800 megs and bringing it right offline, or 800 megs and coming back right up online. You would instead have to spread your curtailment out in like a kind of a staircase fashion and spread it over, say, 20 or 30 minutes. So it de-incentivizes some of the Bitcoin miners because the quick load profile, the ability to curtail immediately, is great for economic decisions. If you're saying I need to turn off immediately because ERCOT pricing went crazy and I have to get off right away. But I think there's a give and take there where ERCOT's very volatile. Through some of that volatility, those peaks in pricing tend to last, or the valleys in pricing tend to really last. The ramp rate, ramping down, ramping up, I think could be a good balance where we're still supporting the grid, still participating in demand response programs, still incentivized to be in Texas to help the grid, but we're not running the risk of possibly stepping on the frequency and throwing frequency out of bounds. So I would say Bitcoin mining's helping grid innovation also.
Interesting. I didn't realize that other part, considering the ramp down of miners and that particular part of the load profile. So that is actually news to me. Very interesting.
Yeah, there's two parts, supply, demand, and if they're not in line, frequency falls out of bounds. So that's why they really need to match. And if everybody in ERCOT is all price sensitive, nobody wants to be mining when it's $5,000 a megawatt hour, when you're only profitable when it's maybe $40 per megawatt hour. If everybody has roughly the same price sensitivity, and say you've got 6 gigs of Bitcoin miners, let's just say 6 gigs, you can't have 6 gigs just curtailing immediately because now frequency's out. So I would say that that innovation, seeing how Bitcoin miners live on ERCOT, seeing how they're beneficial, figuring out a way to make ERCOT function well with these new loads, it's driving a lot of innovation. And I think at the end of the day, ERCOT ends up much better than it was, much more resilient, and also protected against some of the drastic load profiles that Bitcoin miners also bring. But I'm a huge Bitcoin mining proponent. Need it to stay. That's our company.
So I want to touch on another piece that ties to profitability for mining. Mm-hmm. Topic of, I guess, this podcast here, how to maximize profit as a miner. And I want to look at it from the perspective of a miner that's looking to scale up an operation. So how to operate at scale, right? Because operating a 500 kilowatt site is very different than operating a 50 megawatt site. It comes with its all host of different challenges at those different scales. And at the end of the day, you want good operations because when you have higher uptime, if your machines are online, then they're generating Bitcoin, and that's money for you as a miner for your bottom line. So the question for you is, how do you assess operations as they scale? And by assess operations as they scale, how do you consult or identify ways to maximize a miner's uptime? Because as we mentioned, you want to keep these machines online so they keep hashing. So from that perspective, how do you, just in simple terms, how do you maximize uptime as a miner at different scales?
Good question. So our software does a lot of automation. I think that any miner running at any scale, even if you're a hobby miner like what we were, we had 13, 15 ASICs. At any scale, you need automation because if you're not watching it and something goes offline, you're no longer profitable. You need you need to know that something's watching the machines when you're sound asleep, Will. And for those 8 hours, hopefully, I'm more of like a 6.5 guy myself. For
I
those
got to get those numbers up, man.
I know it's rookie numbers, right? So I'm a 6.5 hour guy, but if if I was going to be a champ like you and hit 8 every day, those 8 hours when you're asleep, if a miner goes offline, you just lost 8 hours of revenue. So automation's key. You need and when you think about it, if you have say 10 people running I don't know a 10 meg mine, you're eventually going to hit this point where the amount of people you're going to need to staff an operation with, if you hit 100 megs, 200 megs, 800 megs, you're not going to just fill it with a ton of people. You're just going to have people running around the site bumping into each other. So you need to have a ton of automation to make sure the operation's running effectively, it's functioning properly, and ideally your techs are only ever putting out fires or pulling machines that actually need repair, like fans, hash boards, not just, oh, miner stopped hashing. Let me log in and reboot it. You would need 500 people sitting there just watching miners and clicking reboot all day. Not a good use of your time. So automation's key. Staying profitable, though, I think it's a different answer during a bull market than it is in a bear market. In a bull market, it is we saw sites that were getting energized and people don't know where equipment is. You don't know if it's plugged in. You've got a serial number. Where's that thing located? I don't know. Just get them on the shelf. Just get them on the shelf and start mining. We'll figure it all out later. And you never figure it out later. You make a lot of bull market calls and then you end up chapter 11 through a bear market. So the decisions people make during a bull market, sometimes people fire from the hip and think there's no mistakes we can make here. You still have to manage it right. But during a bear market's when a lot of those poor calls really shake out. So in a bear market, automation's key, but even through a bull market, you should be thinking about it too. What's our risk strategy going to look like? How are we going to be buying power? Are we going to be on a fixed rate because right now it looks decent? Are we going to sign a PPA? Are we going to be index pricing and just kind of riding real-time markets and just buying and selling as we're energized and off? Are we going to do a block and index strategy where maybe we're going to buy some power in advance for some fixed length and maybe we're going to lock in a purchase and maybe be indexed with part of it? How you manage your risk and how you manage your power, if you can think about it and be conscious of it when you're building your site during a bull market, it will make you very protected during a bear market too. You need to be thinking about how are we buying power, how are we managing risk, and a lot of that comes down to having the thoughts up front. What programs are we participating in demand response? Are we going to be price sensitive? Are we going to be buying blocks ahead of time? Are we just going to be no risk maybe and just try to ride index as much as we can? And if we get priced out one time, it could really mess us up. I think that all of that has to be a thought way up front. And the people that are making it through the bear markets, if you look at how people are making profitability, I just heard something yesterday from a publicly traded miner, 40% of their revenue over, I think, 2022 was from curtailment. So 40% of their revenue just came off of demand response, economic dispatches. That's a lot of money. And if you look at how that percentage shifts during a bull market, it might counter where the bull market Bitcoin mining revenue is probably a large portion of your portfolio. But if you have a good strategy for managing risk, you're being conscious of how you're buying power, you have you need to have a strategy and what types of demand response programs you're participating in. And all of that also, when you're asking those questions, leads into what type of machines am I buying? If you're making a call by saying, hey, I'm going to be in ERCOT, I want to be in CLR, which is an ancillary service, and I'm going to participate in RRS. For that kind of stuff, that pays out a lot. But you have to have a super controllable load profile to be able to participate. And 9 times out of 10, the machines that people buy can't participate in it unless they have custom firmware, or if you buy a certain manufacturer and you configure it a certain way. So you might be making business calls around how you're going to be buying power and how you're going to be managing your risk at the site based on just numbers. And if you don't have the insight to connect that to the types of machines that I'm going to be buying to make sure I can participate in those programs, your whole strategy is actually off now. So that's what we're seeing now, where we've got some customers coming to us saying, hey, I'm getting into some of these ancillary programs in ERCOT. I'm looking into sync reserves in PJM. I'm looking into all these other programs because I got to start making as much money as I can through this bear market. And then we end up engaged with them and we'll say, well, what type of machines do you have? Damn. All right. Well, we got to figure out how we're going to help you out. So managing risk, thinking about how you're buying power, where you're going to be, having a strategy for that's really important. And we've actually, we just brought somebody onto the team that actually, we're going to be doing free consultations with all of our customers to get them engaged with. A guy we got on the team, his name's Jeremy. He's got like 17 years on the supply side. So he'll be helping our customers start to find ways to help them achieve this managed approach rather than just riding on a bull market vibe and hoping you make it to the other side.
Yeah, the difference between different miners, there's one thing to looking at a brand on the outside, and then there's another to being on the inside of their actual operations. You don't have to give any names, but I'm just curious, what is the biggest shit show run mine or uptime that you've seen before, where you just show up and you're looking at things and you're just wondering how these guys are still in business?
That's a good one. Let me think. So, well, uptime's an interesting one because sometimes uptime could actually be low uptime could be great because you might actually be rarely up because you have a great strategy on your power side. And as an example, in ERCOT, if you purchased a block of power, I hate to keep bringing it back to ERCOT and power, but that's the way the world works these days, I guess. So if you might be in ERCOT, and if you look at like what Riot does, they've got this huge block of power bought on this huge, it's just this, they have a pretty sweet deal where it's a ton of power bought at a fixed cost for a long term. So now if that means that they kind of control that power. So say they bought Will, you bought 100 megs of power in a block and it's reserved for you. That means that you're paying the block cost. So say you bought it at $10 a megawatt hour. That means for you to be running and consuming that, you're paying $10 a megawatt hour. But if ERCOT takes off and ERCOT goes from $10 a megawatt hour to $4,000 a megawatt hour, you own that block. So that means if you turn off and you stop consuming, that 10 or 100 megawatts that you had now gets settled and ERCOT buys it in the real-time market. So you had the rights to that 100 megs. You can consume it yourself for $10, or you can sell it to ERCOT for real-time pricing, and they have to buy it. So the people you might have low uptime, but killing it. You are just super profitable because your strategy had you on a block for a period of time when ERCOT had volatility, and you curtailed and you sold it back to ERCOT real time and you made millions. That's like, I think Riot, I don't want to speak for, I don't know too much about Riot, but I know that they did very well during that Texas storm. Millions of dollars in revenue.
When you think about it, those numbers get pretty wild if they're selling that at $10 a megawatt hour.
Yes, it gets crazy. So having a good strategy is the most important thing. So you might have low uptime, but you might be more profitable than anybody that's 100% up. So I forgot the question now because I got so so
Just
tuned
like
up
any
on power.
story, I guess the
Okay,
story would
story
be around a
about bad
miner
uptime.
that, yeah, that was not participating for reasons that make economic sense, like demand response, and just they didn't know how to run their mine because they did that bull market approach where
Yeah,
they were like, plug it in, we'll figure it out later,
yeah. We
completely
went to
disorganized.
we went to one site that we were trying to help them get their load into a demand response program, and for some of that stuff, you have to have you might enroll in the market, and you might say I've got a meg, which means that you need to have a meg that the grid can get from you. And we would go into a test with them, and the containers they bought weren't any good. The cooling was terrible. And we would be on the phone with the CSP about to run a test with the customer there. And we'd curtail the load. But the load, they couldn't get up to a meg because there was so many heating problems. They didn't know where any miners were. They didn't know, oh, well, this miner's offline. Is that supposed to be online? I don't know. I don't think we even have that many miners. Well, somehow you have. So so you end up in these situations where we're even trying to help somebody get enrolled in one of these programs, and they have to pass this test to make sure the load is where it needs to be. And we couldn't even get it there just because they had so much stuff overheating. And then it got to the point where we were getting them, trying to get them in, and it's like, well, let's do it in the morning before things get hot. I guess we'll pass, but man, you're going to be in trouble when it actually anything else happens throughout the rest of the day. I would say there's still a lot of people out there that still have a lot of trouble. They're surviving, but some operations are not too clean.
So when you look at the competitiveness of the market now, moving on from the actual operational uptime to just the dynamics that you see in a hyper competitive market, which is Bitcoin mining, how do you assess timing within the cycle? And by timing within the cycle, I'm talking about in regards to the halving. So as we know, roughly every 4 years, every 210,000 blocks, the block reward, the amount of Bitcoin that's given to the miners for mining Bitcoin, that gets cut in half. So right now, roughly every 10 minutes, 6.25 Bitcoins being given out. In estimated April/May of 2024 is when the next halving will happen, and the block reward is going to go to 3.125 Bitcoin every 10 minutes. This is going to keep happening roughly every 4 years. And as a miner, you have to be able to look at the landscape, assess the competition, and then find the best way to maximize your profit. So from your perspective, what do you think is the best way to do this? How do you look at it? Do you have any recommendations?
Start mining yesterday would be probably my answer. We're kind of, like you said, the timer's running. We've got the halving coming up. People that had a great strategy and leveraged the bear market to scoop up assets on the cheap. I mean, you look at the if you look at the bull market, ASICs were trading for what, 13,000, 14,000 for an S19J Pro, and then the bear market hits, and here they are for $1,000 or $1,800. People have been, at least from our perspective, people have been doubling down on the bear market, and there is a ton of capacity that's recently been energized, a ton of demand that's recently been energized in ERCOT, other ISOs too. People have really doubled down on this bear market, which is why we're seeing all-time highs like every single day. Hash rate is just constantly coming online because people know that if I'm not mining today and I'm mining tomorrow, I'm just going to be getting less Bitcoin because I'm really putting myself at a disadvantage because I'm closer to the halving. So we need to get as many sats as we can before that halving hits, because the longer we go, the more halvings we go through, the more we need transaction volume to increase. And we're not really, there's been an increase with some of the latest stuff that's happened on the chain, but we need transaction volume to go up. So for right now, the only thing that we have constant is for every 10 minutes, we're getting 6.25 Bitcoins. So that means we need to double down on what's constant right now, and let's just hit it hard. So if you are thinking about mining, yesterday was the best day to do it. Today's the next best day.
Great answer.
Yep.
last variable within this price matrix
Sure.
or profitability matrix is price of Bitcoin. And I know people hate getting asked for price predictions, but I'm always going to continue to ask.
Okay.
Do you have any price predictions that you feel comfortable sharing regarding Bitcoin?
Good question. I will say 1 Bitcoin will be worth 1 Bitcoin. No. But if we're going to bring it back to a fiat question, I would say, I'm going to go bullish. I'm going to go pretty bullish. By the end of 2023, we're saying?
You can give whatever time frame you like.
End of 2023, let's say 84K. I'm going to say 84,000 USD. But still
That is
one
very
Bitcoin.
bullish.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it, man.
It's not like Balaji, but it definitely is a much bigger number than it is right now.
Come on. What do you think? What do you think? Well, where are you?
So I normally like to give my predictions if I can choose the time frame, sometime like post halving and go for a new all-time high number. I think it's pretty tough to predict in the time frame by the end of 2023. I do think that your prediction is a good one, though.
Thank you. You're trying to make me feel not like an idiot. I appreciate that, Will.
I would want to give a prediction though by, let's say, the end of 2025 and give like, a high. I would go for a much higher number. So I would say by the end of 2025, and I'm just basing that off of roughly 6 months after the halving, I would give a prediction in the ballpark of at least 250, but I would see higher than that if I was going to make an actual prediction on that.
There you go. I like it. I'll take that.
Yeah.
That's a good answer. So
I think miners are still going to be are going to be doing pretty well at that point.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, man. When you think so there's 2 questions answered right there. When's the best time to be building a Bitcoin mine? Yesterday and then today. When's the best time to be stacking sats? Yesterday and today.
Yeah. And that plays back true in a long time horizon from the start of Bitcoin. I mean, having some conversations, talking with people who are mining in the early days of Bitcoin. I was talking with Brad Mills the other day, who's talking about mining multiple Bitcoin a day on his laptop. And
wish I was around for that.
Difficulty is just going to keep going up. I believe that the price of Bitcoin is going to keep going up.
Yeah. I don't check the price too much. Usually just probably 50 times a day. That's about it. But when we were mining back in, I mean, it depends on how you zoom out and look at the landscape. When we were mining back in 2016 or so, I think it was still triple digits. We were around when it just broke 1,000 or so. And if I didn't look at the price every day and I didn't know that we got up to 60K or whatever and came back down, I would be saying, man, 29K, that's a lot better than $700. I'll take that. So it's all perspective.
100%. Yeah. I mean, just going back to earlier on when you guys were just getting started, I mean, back in 2017, 2018, that bull to bear market, Bitcoin was trading at what, around, is it like just about $3,000?
Yeah, I think so. It got down to 3,000. I think we saw it. I feel like it got down just below 2, but during that cycle, I thought we got up to 19 or 20 somewhere around there, and then we made the U-turn.
It crashed.
Yeah,
and hovered around.
Yes, like it got somewhere a couple thousand, somewhere around there, around 3. Yeah, maybe that sounds right. Yeah, but if you zoom out, we're better than we were.
Yeah, and man, those GPU mining rigs were a pain to keep online.
You're telling me
that must have no wonder you had to keep driving back and forth.
Honestly, that was actually so. I know we're getting close on time here, but we started off with ASICs. And then we got into GPUs. And what made Foreman successful was once you run a very small GPU mine, you realize there's no way anybody's going to scale with this. Mm-hmm. I spent 99% of my time managing those GPU rigs. It was a total nightmare. So then we were like, all right, well, we're already late to the GPU game. Let's just double down on the ASIC side because those things are a lot easier to run. It's a lot easier to work with them. And if anybody's going to start scaling and building out facilities like crazy, if they do GPUs, good luck to them. They're going to need probably 10 million people for 100 rigs.
So Before we get to the final question here, can you just in very simple terms explain what it is you guys are focusing on at Foreman, how you guys help miners, like what your value proposition is? Because I do believe that a lot of people who are listening to this could benefit from what it is that you guys provide. And at the end of the day, one of the big goals of this podcast is to help educate people on mining and then help them maximize their mining capacity. So definitely
Yep.
want you to talk about what Foreman's doing today.
So traditionally, we've done miner monitoring and management, where monitoring would be telling you what machines are online, what machines are offline. Management was initially scoped to just giving you a way to mass reconfigure miners. So if you're fully remote, you needed a way to say, oh, that machine's offline, I'll click a button and reboot it. I'll click a button and change the pools and reconfigure it. That was kind of Foreman traditionally. Lately, we've pivoted much more towards heavy automation, so trying to automate mines as much as possible. So again, when you're asleep, Will, for your 8 hours a night, somebody's watching the machines and rebooting and keeping them online. I think our strategic objective for the last, say, year or so has been more on the demand response side. So, and cost avoidance. So, helping our customers that are riding through this bear market participate in any demand response program they want to achieve those insurance checks, we'll call it, every month, because that's how a lot of people are surviving through these markets. And also helping our customers avoid uh, basically being price sensitive in deregulated markets. So if you happen to be just riding index pricing and you need a way to say, well, I know I'm not profitable at $60 a megawatt hour, so I need something to turn me off if pricing goes high. But then when I'm below, I'll stay on because I know I'm profitable here. So we've been really focused a lot lately on demand response and cost avoidance. We're also making kind of a data offering now too, where Foreman's pretty good at, actually, Foreman's great, I think, at monitoring and management and helping through the curtailment side. But now we have a lot of our customers saying, hey, can you help me with some business insight? I need to know, how am I looking historically? So we're building up this offering now where we could kind of give you a way for our customers to connect to some of the historical data that we might have on our side, so they can feed that into some BI flow or some analytics engine that they want to use to say, let's see how I'm Dan, I'm a miner. I know I've been building mines for the last 2 years. Let's see if I'm doing better today than I was 2 years ago. So we will be the data offering for a lot of our customers moving forward. We'll give them a nice, neat way to access a lot of their historicals. But the takeaway with Foreman is that you might look at it and it feels pretty heavyweight. It's free for less than 25 miners in pretty much full featured there. We are the hobby miner's friend and also an enterprise miner's, I think, close friend too. So we support wide end of the spectrum. If you go on our Discord, we've got tons of people with just one S19 or one S9, or we had somebody asking yesterday about L3s. Everybody's welcome on Foreman. It looks pretty heavyweight, but if you focus on just the things you need, nice automation, nice ways to reboot things. And then if you're a large scale miner, ways to automate your demand response participation, ways to automate your kind of price sensitivity and cost avoidance, ways to do reporting, kind of big data processing off of all your historicals and everything. So I think we do pretty good at covering both ends of the spectrum.
Awesome. Yeah. So you're everybody's friend, small
Yeah.
miners to big miners.
Yep.
You cover the full spectrum.
Yes.
All right, cool. I got some rapid fire questions here.
Ooh. Are these fun ones or are these mining related ones?
I think that they're pretty fun.
Okay, let's see what we got. Let's see what we got.
All right. Who do you think adopts Bitcoin first, Peter Schiff or Warren Buffett? And as you're thinking, for people who are listening who might not, or I'm assuming every single person who's listening knows the name Warren Buffett, but Peter Schiff, huge gold bug. He's known about Bitcoin for a long time. He understands a lot of the value propositions of a store value asset. He views gold as a store value asset. He's been anti-Bitcoin for a very long time. And he has left a tremendous amount of money on the table from not adopting Bitcoin. But he's so close, he just hasn't made the shift. But his son is a big fan of Bitcoin. So maybe he's unintentionally getting exposure through his son. I'm sure that they have very fun conversations at the dinner table. But the point of this question is that these are two people that are very set in their ways against Bitcoin. And which one do you think?
I'm going to go Warren Buffett. I'm going to go Warren Buffett. That's where I'm going. I I don't know. To somebody who traditionally views gold so well, you would think that they would make a natural next move into Bitcoin because it's kind of like a digital gold, but it's even more. It's finite. Uh, I don't know. I'm going Buffett. I'll put my money on Buffett. Let's pray there. Even though I know he hates it and he thinks it's a huge scam and he probably would rather be caught dead than buying stacking sats. But I'm going to go down that route.
It's a good answer. Yeah,
There you
Peter
go.
Schiff. He's very close. I asked this question to someone else, and they said Peter Schiff because he thinks Warren Buffett's going to die first.
That's a good. How old is Warren Buffett? I'm actually going to look that up really quick.
That's a good question. Yeah, look it up
You would
and
think
plug
that
it
maybe
here.
he's going to be one of those guys that just maybe admits defeat right before. Oh, he's 92. Oh, I made a bad guess.
And not only that, he also eats McDonald's, and he's not a
The
super
key to
healthy
youth. Look
guy,
at that.
but I mean, he's incredibly sharp for how old he is.
92, and he's crushing McDonald's every day.
Yeah.
Man, I guess we got to switch our diets up. Well,
He said that he will also order off the menu based on how the market's doing. So when the market's not doing as well, he's ordering the cheaper version from McDonald's. It's
it's hitting the dollar
keeping
menu.
on a budget.
Okay, that's good to
Yeah.
know. I'll keep that in mind when I'm trying to get to. It looks like he's worth 103 billion. So I'll keep that in mind on my route.
There you go. There you go. Hey, that's some additional compounding that you get access to.
There
Those
we go.
guess he's out there penny pinching. So my next question is actually related to Elon Musk. So
Mm.
when Elon Musk first came in to Bitcoin, everyone was super excited. And then all of a sudden he started putting out some other ideas, particularly around Bitcoin mining, that started to change his stance on Bitcoin. So he started attacking Bitcoin for its energy use. He started talking about some other cryptos like Doge. But at the end of the day, I'm curious as to your perspective as a miner. One, did you have any initial thoughts when Elon attacked Bitcoin for its energy use? And then two, do you think he still holds the same position? Do you think he still hasn't looked into the energy side and realized that Bitcoin mining is actually beneficial for renewables?
I would say if I feel like I would get a different answer if I had just me and Elon in one room, nothing recorded, nobody's there, and I was just like, "What are your real thoughts on Bitcoin?" I feel like because he's representing Tesla and the renewable side and solar on roofs and all kinds of stuff, I think that I feel like it was a shareholder push that made him go towards let's attack Bitcoin because we're trying to be super renewable, super green, and Bitcoin mining just looks like it's not backed by renewables in any capacity. Just that's just how some people like to think. So I would say I think he'd give me a different answer if I was just like Elon. Nobody's gonna know. What do you just give me the thumbs up, thumbs down? I'll never ask you again. I feel like he would do the thumbs up to me.
That's a good answer. And
Yeah.
I actually tend to agree with what you just mentioned. I mean, at that time, too, Bitcoin mining was just getting a ton of flack. And it was
Mm-hmm.
before a lot of these other things that we've talked about on this podcast had really hit the mainstream.
Yeah, and you saw his first reaction, right? Tesla was accepting Bitcoin for a while. Couldn't you buy a Tesla with Bitcoin? I thought there was a brief period where they were accepting it.
Yep, they
And
were. And he was also holding it on the balance sheet. He was one of the early large publicly traded companies that was actually putting Bitcoin on his balance sheet.
and then you look at some of the stuff that's happening with Twitter lately, opening up source code, opening up the algorithm, all that stuff. It seems like we're really heading down more of a open source on the verge of a decentralized thing on Twitter. It feels like we're somehow pushing there as a community. And I think that the fact that he's open sourcing some of it, I think it's just it seems to align more with the Bitcoiners philosophy. That's I think I would say that his stance on Bitcoin is manipulated right now.
So I want to ask you about artificial intelligence. Is this something that you've been following at all, just out of curiosity? Because I'll
Yeah,
adjust the question based on how far you've dove down the rabbit hole of
I
AI.
would say I'm not too deep down the rabbit hole, but man, I wish my team used it more. Chat
That's a
GPT and
good answer.
everything. That is I use it like I use it any tweet you see on the Foreman Twitter account, Chat GPT all the way. You can just say write an engaging tweet that'll do X, Y, and Z. Make it more engaging, make it less clickbaity, and it will. It's incredible. So I would say that I'm a user. I would say I'm not too deep down the rabbit hole, but I know that we're trying to find ways to embrace it, to just it's so powerful for just helping out with research and digging into things and learning from the fire hose in a very concise way. It's going to change the world. It already is.
Oh, it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
I've been following it for a while, but not really diving in deep. And now I'm really trying to understand it just from my own personal knowledge from like a CTO type of level, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning about it by using it. Like I'm asking ChatGPT, imagine you're a world class chief technology officer at an AI startup. What are the most important things for you to actually understand, keep in mind, and then just diving down the rabbit hole with it. And it's unbelievable how much information and reasoning it has, but then
Yeah.
simultaneously just the speed at which you get these responses. Like
And
even
you
if you have an
can,
incredible
yeah.
employee, you're not going to get these types of response times because you just ask it and it gives you the answer right away.
Yeah. Traditionally, if you're going to write some content piece or something like that, you got to add time for research, learning. You got to go through all this process just before you can even come up with a skeleton. But now you can use AI to do your research and also help you stage up a piece. And then you just kind of have to put. I'm not trying to undermine, by the way, anybody that writes content, but you could just use it to really make you more efficient. And it'd be interesting to see over the next 10 years if we could somehow. I think there's a way to track it, the shift in publicly visible content that was ChatGPT created versus kind of organically created, somebody tickling the plastic and just typing out the article. It'd be interesting to kind of see that pie chart and how it evolves over time over the next 10 years. It's going to change the world. I guess I'm a little bit at a disadvantage here because we have one kind of writer, and man, teams are going to be pumping out articles now. So SEO is going to get pretty dang competitive.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And with ChatGPT, some of these other AI tools, do you see any ways that this gets integrated into the Bitcoin mining industry at all? It's a very tough question, but
That is a
just
tough
out of
question.
curiosity, outside of just the workflows within a company, because of course you can use these these this technology for any type of work, but any type of predictions around how this might actually affect things at scale within the industry?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the publicly usable models are more trained around kind of chat and interactions, right? More of like a text exchange. I do think that AI and I think this industry is still very young from a data perspective. I know that people are just starting to ask us questions about some of the historicals that we have and how can they get access to those to influence their own decisions. So people are getting more wise, I think, to the fact that they've been mining. I don't want to say blind, but not really keeping tabs on how things evolve over time. I do think AI and machine learning and everything would be really interesting in this space, trying to get into like predictive failure detection, predictive kind of the right now. I think the mining world is very reactionary. I think that AI and modeling and machine learning can really make us more of a kind of proactive miners rather than just waiting until shit hits the fan and then we try to get stuff back. So I think that'll be pretty revolutionary in the space, and we are trying to work on some of this now.
It is fascinating, and thinking about what you just mentioned, it is such an early industry. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like naturally in an early industry, you're figuring a lot of things out. You don't have all the everything
Right.
operationalized yet. Uh, but it is very reactionary, I would say, in many ways. Just, hey, this seems to be a problem that continues to happen again. The miners keep going down. We need a solution here. What are we going to
Yeah,
do?
exactly. Or even getting to the point where you're able to say, hey, maybe it's time to start looking over here and cleaning this miner because it looks like it might be, maybe it's on its last legs. Let's get ahead of it. So I think that that could really shake up the space. And I think that just because we're so young, I think the sky's the limit on how AI and machine learning and everything could really affect what we do as miners.
100%. So I got one
Cool.
final question. Uh, what is one thing that you believe to be true that the majority of people would disagree with you about? And ideally, if you could give an answer that has not been given in this episode so far.
Hmm. Okay. I would say I'm going to stick by what I've said before, where I think that I struggle still, even since we last talked. Well, I struggle with work life balance. And I think that I would make the opinionated answer where I think that I would much rather grind hard during the short term. I don't know. I think I just like to grind. I like to build. I'm a builder. I think I have an interesting mindset. Some people try to really focus on work life balance and balancing everything, but I would say that work and work hard and work often and work as much as you can and just grind and build something and be successful and don't waste time. Um, the as an entrepreneur, as you two, anytime you're not working, somebody else probably is, and they run the risk of getting ahead of you. So the grind is important. I would say work life balance. I think the balance comes later, much later. I don't think you and I should be. You need to get it from 8 hours down to 6.5 because that's an extra hour and a half every day. That's an extra
That
500 hours a year that you could be grinding. So I think that if you got a free hour, work. That's what I would say. And I think that some people would say it's really important to find a balance and make sure that you're on a sustainable route. But it's not too bad. I like the grind. I like working.
I feel like that's an important mindset, especially for an entrepreneur, because you really do need to grind. There are periods of time, especially where it's all day, every day. And it's not just normal work. At times, I feel like a lot of people, they'll just quantify work by the number of hours that you put into something.
Mm-hmm.
But we've all been in that place where, you might have been in college, or you might have been in the library for 12 hours and said that you worked 12 hours, but you didn't work for 12 hours.
Right.
Maybe you worked for 3 hours, like serious work.
Yeah.
And there are just times where, as an entrepreneur, you got to get those 12 hours, you got to get 12 hours worth of serious work in.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, the sleep component, I think that's an interesting one.
We could probably go back and forth on that because your extra hour and a half might actually make your 12 hours better 12 hours than my extra hour and a half that I got working.
I would actually, I know that I said last question, but I'd love to dive into this with you if you're open to it.
Let's do it. Yeah.
So I've gone through a fairly long discovery process in terms of figuring out which habits actually help me optimize my mental acuity versus like physical performance, things like that. And I've gone through periods where I've slept very little, and I noticed that it did affect the quality of my work when I was actually trying to work. And so the output, I feel like, with taking that hour and a half less, made the output better from a shorter amount of hours, if that makes sense.
That's fair. Yeah, I can see it. You asking for my perspective?
I am asking for your perspective. I'm not saying I'm right either.
That's
just my current outlook on it.
It's interesting. I would say, I don't know if I've done any calculated stuff here. I noticed that if I go 8.5, I feel like I almost have a harder time waking up in the morning. And maybe it's a function of the time that I go to bed, because
what time do you normally go to bed?
I think I'm probably a midnight guy. I'm a midnight guy. What about you?
So I recently changed my system that I've been operating under. So I go to bed no later than 11 p.m. now, when I can control my routine. Obviously, when I'm traveling and there are conferences and things like that, that's out the window. But whenever I can get into my own zone, control my environment, control all my meals, everything like that, I'm going to bed no later than 11. Ideally, I'm getting to bed at anywhere between 8 to 9 p.m. or 7 to 9 p.m.
You're getting in bed at 7 to 9 p.m. and then what are you doing in bed for 2 hours before you go to sleep?
I can actually knock out pretty easily. I don't take much melatonin. When I was getting into the routine to try and start going to bed early, I was taking melatonin for the first couple of days.
Okay.
But then after that, I just got into it. And I, for some reason, just work super, super well in the mornings. Like, I'll wake up, I'll drink some athletic greens, go meditate, and then just start working. And I'll try and push off my coffee. And so I'll try and get like a 90-minute block of work without any coffee. And for some reason, I'm able to just tap into hyper focus in that
Yeah.
time. And then I can push out my coffee. And when I push out my coffee, it gets rid of my afternoon crash. So that's the routine that I found that works best for me. But it's just so hard to do unless I'm not traveling. Because if I'm
Yeah.
traveling, it's just an impossible
Yeah.
schedule.
Traveling, my whole body feels like it shuts down. I would say, so I'll give you my routine. So I'm usually in bed by midnight. Usually I'm probably working until about 11:45. 15 minutes to, get ready for bed, hop in bed. I've been much better about the phone. I think my phone usage is down to, it's under 2 hours a day. Used to be much higher than that. So
That's good.
we're getting better. I really track my phone usage more. Get up around 6:30. I have a slower morning with my dogs, and first thing I do every morning, I got this out of that. I forgot what book it's even called now. The one by the Navy SEAL who teaches you to basically start your day by making,
Jocko?
where he teaches you to make your bed every morning as soon as you wake up.
Yeah, I think that's Jocko.
I forgot the name of it. Well,
He's
I
got
actually,
like that thick
yes,
jaw,
yes,
like super. Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
I wake up every morning, and the first thing I do is make the bed, and that is usually what starts me down like a productive morning, where I'm making the bed, cleaning up any blankets that are around, picking up dog toys, playing with the dogs outside. I just go down this route, and then I usually end up getting into work by, I'd say, probably 8:30 or so. So before, I think my what helps my days out is I seem to naturally wake up at 6:30. Even if I try to sleep, I just can't. I don't actually set an alarm. I'll just kind of wake up at 6:30. Just my rhythm. Go through my morning routine takes about 2 hours, which is mostly me just trying to avoid work, which I've been really good about lately. I try to be pretty disengaged from work until I get into work, and I just go around the house, clean up, get the dogs, play with the dogs, get to work, and then I'm hyper focused on work from like 8:30 until 6:30 or 7:30, and then I go home. But I used to be super into coffee. I used to drink a ton of coffee too. I haven't tried Athletic Greens yet, but I've been thinking about it because I listen to Joe Rogan. It's all over all of his podcasts, and he's selling the heck out of me on it. So give me your honest feedback on that. If it's you notice, is it you feel good when you drink that in the morning?
Yeah. Well, here's the best way that I can describe it. I think that overall, a lot of it depends on your diet, but no
Yeah,
matter what, it's a great way that you can supplement your diet to
yeah,
try and be healthier. I mean, I've always taken like multivitamins and other things like that, but it's just been part of my routine, and I felt really good since getting on it. But simultaneously, I've been doing other things that have also been healthy at the same time as starting Athletic Greens, if that makes sense. It's
yeah,
not
yeah,
like I've
yeah.
been doing it for a super long time. Also, cold showers. I started
Ooh,
doing
no.
cold showers and
Okay.
Athletic Greens the same time. So first thing I do when I wake up, and now I'm in the routine of it, so it's not as bad. But getting into this routine was awful. I get out of bed and I'm so tired, and I walk into the shower, and the first thing I do is just crank it on the coldest setting
Oh
and
man, while
just
you're
take
in
a
it
cold,
and you, oh,
yeah, while I'm in it. So there's no like,
there's no, oh,
dipping
let
or
me
anything.
lead
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. Actually, the weirdest mental trick, I'm not sure if this actually like helps, but or if it was me getting used to it or it was this trick that helped, but it's gotten a lot easier. And what I do is I just stare directly at the shower head where the water comes out, and then I turn it on the coldest, and then you can hear like the water getting ready to come out of the shower head, and I just look at it directly in the eye, like let's go, like bring it
How long is your
on.
shower? How long do you take a shower? 10 seconds?
It's probably about like 1 to 2 minutes.
Okay.
Like what I do is I go and get it, like take the shower, and then once I've been completely covered and your body starts to adjust, but it's still freezing, then
Yeah.
I wash myself. So
Okay.
however long that entire process takes, I think it's about like 1 to 2 minutes.
I'm gonna do this tomorrow, and I'll text you in the morning
Yeah,
because
text me.
I,
Let me
I
know the
think,
experience.
yeah. Well, since I last saw you, your hair is much longer. So I'm hoping that maybe that's what I'm missing. I'm probably just missing the cold showers. That's probably it.
Yeah, maybe the cold showers is just like everything's
It's the
standing
key to
up.
hair
It's like we
growth.
gotta
Yeah.
we gotta do something here.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna text you tomorrow morning and tell you. I'll give you a thumbs up or thumbs down.
Well, here's the one thing to really give you, and I'm going to hold you to it. If you don't text me,
Okay.
I'm going to
I'll
text
text you.
you.
I'm gonna do it.
But the one thing that the reason why I started doing it is I was listening to a podcast with Andrew Huberman, and he gives a bunch of really valuable information on optimizing your physiology. And I think he's a professor at Stanford, just super knowledgeable guy. And he was talking about the benefits that cold showers give you on your dopamine levels. So I'm not sure if you want to dive down this whole rabbit hole, but long story short, dopamine, it's great for motivation. And when you take a cold shower, you're optimizing your baseline dopamine levels, you're raising your epinephrine, you're doing all these things at the very beginning of the day that are going to help you stay more motivated throughout the day. And that's been something that I've noticed. But I started doing it similar to Athletic Greens, so I might be.
All right, I'm going to do it. I'm doing it tomorrow. Next time you talk to me, I'm going to be sipping Athletic Greens and taking cold showers with long hair.
I love it, man. I love it. Yeah. Well, this was great. I didn't realize that we were going to go into all these other topics, but
yeah, this is fun.
Yeah,
I like this. Yeah, it's a good podcast.
Yeah. Awesome, man. All right. That's all I wanted to cover in today's episode. If you want to hear about how Bitcoin smashes real estate as the ultimate investment opportunity, then click this video right here. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.